back to another episode of In the Sand podcast. I'm excited as always to be back for another episode, and I appreciate the support. I thank you for tuning in each time and just watching us and checking out some of these great interviews. I'm excited to have another great coach on. I get an opportunity to kind of step out my sandbox a little bit and talk a little volleyball today. But the good thing about it is, as I was doing my research, I know that Coach Poole got some basketball ties as well. So I'm excited about that. So it's always fun and exciting to have coaches on where we kind of are aligned in so many different ways. And just doing my research with Coach Poole, again, an amazing person, highly talented, super skilled, great leadership. And the biggest thing that I enjoy about Coach Poole is I'm getting to know her because we had a lot of technical difficulties before this even started. Very patient, and she has a heart for people. And anytime you can put those two together, you know you got a recipe for success. So, Coach Poole, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, Coach. I'm excited about starting this interview. I believe you have such a great journey, and I'm so just passionate about hearing where people come from and how they got to where they are now and where they want to go in the future. So, Coach, take us down. I used to say this in season one, so I guess I'll throw it back. Take us down memory lane, but just tell us about how your career started, or just even from when you were, a teenager or a child. How did you get to this point where you are right now at Northwest Rankin High School?
Okay, well, I'm from Texas, from Conroe, Texas, but I went to school at Willis High School. So let me back it up. I didn't touch competitive sports until I was in seventh grade, which is insane because so many kids start early. And I was allowed to play basketball in seventh grade. I made the C team. We had so many kids on the team, and Coach Savoy, who was the head coach of the program and still my mentor today, he saw something in me and kept me. So I was running down the court the first time, and they taught you in basketball when you want to sub, you can like pat your head or do this with your jersey. So I went like one rep down the court, and I started looking at the coach, patting my head. So when we got in the car, my dad didn't ever say much, but he did tell me that day, he was like, you probably should never ask to come out. you know He's like, you should be close to passing out before you ask to come out. Fast forward seventh grade to ninth grade, I went from being on C team to being on varsity in high school. I've always said this about female athletes: when the light switch turns on, it is on. It is a lot easier, I feel like, to catch up than on the male side. So I found my passion. I really enjoyed the game. It taught me a lot of discipline. I really enjoyed the coach that I played under. Like I said, he's still my mentor, and I'm 36 today. And before I make any business decisions or even like coaching or decisions, a lot of times if it's a big one, I always talk to him and get his perspective on it. So I enjoyed the game. I was a undersized post in high school, which is really funny. But when you're the tallest one out there, that's where they like to stick you. And I tore my ACL my junior summer going into my senior year. So I had to have surgery, and it was devastating for me because at this point, by my junior year, I was pretty serious about the sport. I knew I wanted to play. I was playing AAU. I knew I wanted to go in college, and I felt like I wasn't going to have the opportunity because I was about to have surgery. So my doctor told me, the doctor that did my surgery actually does surgery or did surgery on the Houston Rockets players. So in the Woodlands, Texas, outside of Houston. And he told me, like, you will be back, but you have to rehab and you have to do all of the things. And so my dad, he drove me to the Woodlands multiple times during the week. I did the rehab there. They had a bike for me in the gym at my high school. I look back now and think, man, we had a lot of resources that even some of the schools I've been in Mississippi didn't have, they don't have right now. So, we had a training room. So I did therapy there. I had a bike in the gym. And then when I was released to start doing stuff, I had a coach on the side with me working on those skills. So I showed up the first round of playoffs. I was on the court, hobbling down the court, had that big old chunky brace on, but I did not care. I got to touch the court, and I ended up going to junior college in Texas, Frank Phillips Junior College. I always tell people this because it's just a fun fact, but Coach Yo at Ole Miss, she went to school at Frank Phillips, which I always say is crazy because she's from the Bahamas. And the slogan at Frank Phillips is "Start here, go anywhere." So I feel like the most random people end up there, and then they literally just kind of disperse all over. So teammates, end up at Penn State, Texas Tech, New Mexico State, kind of all over the country. So I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't really know what I wanted to do after my sophomore year. I knew I wanted to play basketball, but the two offers that I had, I mean, quite honestly, looking back now, I either thought I was too good for them or it wasn't good enough.
Right.
One was at Texas A&M International Division II, which is on the border. It's Laredo, Texas, on the border of Mexico, and then Alaska Anchorage, which is obviously in Alaska. I knew I didn't want to go to Alaska, and I also didn't want to go to the border, so I kind of took too long. And that's why, when I'm talking with my athletes now about making decisions, it's very important that every offer that you get is a good offer, right? Not everybody gets those. And so I took too long. And whenever I took too long, I ended up sitting home and registering for online classes. And when I was in high school, I was recruited by Division III coaches, so like UT Tyler, Laterno College, and one of them reached out to me. Two of them reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to come play?" And so Laterno is actually playing Mississippi College.
Right.
And whenever I was there watching that game, one of my former teammates in high school played for Laterno. And she was telling her coach, I obviously was there watching them to see if I was going to go play there. And they were talking. Well, then somehow I got linked up with Mississippi College where we were in communication. And I ended up not going to UT Tyler or Laterno. I ended up in Mississippi because why not? I've always kind of had that perspective of what is there really to lose? There's what, I already said it. I knew I didn't want to sit at the house. I knew that. And so I ended up at MC. I ended up having my twin sons, Tatum and Tyler, at 21 years old. So I didn't even play a season at Mississippi College. I had Tatum and Tyler pretty young. And but I did meet some lifetime friends there. So like Jaleesa Taylor, I'll get to her in a minute, but that's how I ended up at Northwest. And after I had the twins, I went to William Carey, excuse me. I was at William Carey. I was taking classes. I knew that I was going to have a degree. I was 21 years old. I came from a home where one side didn't do any form of school or, careers. And I just knew I was not going to do that. So whatever I had to do, night classes, I did it. So I had, two twin little boys and I was going to school and I finished my degree and I ended up in Oxford
Mm.
because again, why not? You know?
Right.
So I will list the schools that I've been to. I've been to Oak Grove, South Panola, Oxford, Lafayette, and then now Northwest. I've just kind of taken the tour of Mississippi because I'm not from here. And it's, the better I know the state, the more people you know. So I've really enjoyed my time getting to be here, but majority of my time coaching in the state of Mississippi, I've also been to Greene County. Majority of the time in Mississippi, I've been a basketball coach.
Right.
So, like for example, when I went to this Tomorrow's 25 thing back in August, I saw Coach Yo and she looked at my shirt and she said, "Why does your polo say volleyball on it?" And I was like, here we are. They came and knocking, and I kind of like it now. So most of the coaches around here know me as basketball. But then since I've moved to Central Mississippi, I feel like my identity now because there's been turnover in coaches, and I think my identity now is most people know me as volleyball. So that's how I got here.
Coach, that's an interesting story. Coach Yo, look at you. Hey, Coach, you got the wrong shirt. They gave you the wrong thing.
First thing she said to me.
And Coach Yo is she's an amazing person to talk to. I had an opportunity to talk to her, and I'm nothing special, but she came down to our coaches clinic and she spoke. She actually has spoken the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
She resonates with fans. She resonates with other coaches and players. So, shout out to Coach Yo. But Coach, I never would have imagined that your story was what you presented to us because, and everybody know it's kind of cliche, you never judge a book by its cover.
That's right.
As you and I were joking before the podcast, and that's kind of what In the Sand podcast is that when you go to a sandbox, you really never know what you draw out of it. And so to be able to see that, that's an amazing thing. There's a lot about just overcoming a lot of things that you talked about. And I'm just so caught up for words. I don't know exactly where I want to start with this. Um, but I will say this. I will say this. So I'm assuming that basketball obviously was your first love, and I'm assuming that you probably wanted to get on somebody's staff or maybe coach basketball in the head coaching position. Coach, why did that necessarily come to pass? How did that part just not come into alignment with you? And I know that you did,
Right, right.
basketball.
So
Kind of just talk about that.
I started at Oak Grove as their head middle school coach.
Okay.
It is my belief that anybody who coaches should start in a middle school program. You have to run it from the top, from the bottom to the top. Okay. Lots of patience, lots of fundamentals,
Amen.
uh, ultimate communication, right?
Yes.
That's your feeder program. So those are the most important, I think, players. So I started at Oak Grove. We just got really good at the basics, like the transitioning defense layups. Well, then I ended up in North Mississippi. So when I got to North Mississippi, again, head middle school basketball coach at South Panola. I actually helped a little bit with Jamie Helm at the high school. So, in the coaching world, a lot of times when you pop up in a position and maybe like the middle school level, because sometimes they're not connected, the middle school and the high school don't have that connection. Well, she didn't even know that I wanted to help with high school. I formed that relationship with her and was like, hey, wherever you, because I taught at the high school, went to the middle school for practice, and so I was like, whenever you need me, like I'm here. I love this game, and so that's how I started kind of getting within the high school game. I helped at, like I said, paraprofessional before any of that while I was in school at Greene County at the high school. So I'd been at the high school level for a season, and when I left South Panola, I was called to be the assistant at Oxford. Well, when I was at Oxford, I had a good experience, but I wanted a little bit more hands on. So, most levels at the high school level in Mississippi, they have a ninth grade coach, a JV coach, and then, a high school assistant. So I wasn't able to coach the JV. Like I wasn't standing up and coaching, which is fine. Every program has their own way of doing things, but I knew for me, in order to be where I wanted to go, I had to make an adjustment because the only way I was going to get good at it and get better was by doing it. Um and so Shane Lindsay, he caught me at a tournament and he was like, "Want to come coach?" And I was like, yes. So I was his head, JV coach, his first assistant at the high school. And then also at that point, high school sports, they're like, hey, we're also going to tack on head volleyball coach because we want to get your money up. And I had been doing, assistant volleyball coach because in your early career, like I had done powerlifting, track, volleyball. So I had already been in the volleyball side a little bit, but nothing on of that extreme. So, once you enter and Newton Miller got to back up, he was the head coach at Center Hill. And I had called him and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, when you leave the basketball world, it's going to be hard for you to get back. Like you got to stay in it because you've got to make your name. You've got to have those, that experience. You got to get out there because when you interview, that's what they're going to look at. They're not going to say, well, she was a high school head volleyball coach. They want a basketball coach. And so I knew exactly what he was saying was right, but I wanted to coach basketball so bad. I was like, all right, I'll just tack that on. And I ended up doing that. I interviewed at Petal a few years after that for the head basketball position and thought I had it, honestly. And I didn't actually. I don't think anybody that interviewed did because they ended up keeping the same person. And then I think their administration staff ended up coaching during that school year. And so, but look, part of the journey, right? I think everything happens for a reason because I was asked to come to Northwest with JT, Jaleesa Taylor. She was like, come be my assistant. I started coaching here, and then the Northwest Rankin volleyball staff, they all started families at the same time, and they were like, hey, we're leaving, or and so I got that knock on the door one day when I was in class, and it's like, you know, hey, what do you think? And I just think that the pool for volleyball is not as big as any other sport. So finding someone quality that you trust that's going to represent your school in the manner you want them to and lead your program. I think that my administration here, which, I'll say is phenomenal, they trusted me to do that. And so I said, I told JT, I said, hey, look, I love you, but I can't do both. Like if I'm going to be 2 feet in, I'm 150%. I can't be both. And so I officially exited. And again, in my ear, Coach Mueller, he's like, don't do it. Don't do it. He was like, if you do it, that's official. And so I ended up doing it. And like I said, I didn't just jump in. Like I dove in. I was like, how can we be better? How can we, be noticeable around the state? Like, how can I get these kids to grow past the game? So that's really why that fizzled out. But I will tell you this, and we kind of joked about this before. I think I can finally say that basketball and volleyball, it's at first it was all basketball, but now it's like I really think I enjoy the game more on the volleyball side, which is I never thought in a million years I would say that. I mean, I was that kid at Christmas asking for slides with the basketball on 'em. I mean, just, the most random stuff, and my dad bought it for me, which is embarrassing. Like, we shouldn't have shouldn't have been doing all that. But, yeah, so I've really enjoyed it, and I think basketball, though, shaped me for who I am. Without that sport, I would not be the Kelsie Poole that everybody gets. The discipline, the work ethic, the understanding that it is bigger than me, that was taught to me in my program. My coach did a phenomenal job. Character, that was the word that he always talked about. So that is something that I've always carried with me. I knew when I was in high school, which is crazy. I said, I want to be a biology teacher. I think because he was, I said, I want to be a biology teacher and I want to coach. I knew that in high school. So I knew that going into my career, what I was going to do. I just didn't know where it was going to lead me today, but it definitely shaped me for the person I am today.
Supporters of Inner Sand Podcast. I told you we got a good one. That's some great information. Middle school is important. I'm glad you said that, Coach, because a lot of our younger coaches are coming out of college, and the first thing they want to do, they want to jump straight to the high school level. And I think it's so pivotal. And I don't know if we can put a rule in, probably not, but I think it's so pivotal that you start middle school because when you get in that gym, it's different. Like it's different. It's a reason why a lot of us don't go back to middle school, but I think middle school is where you get your bruises, is where you get your
Yep.
long nights because you have to do so much. But the most important thing that young coaches who just started who are just starting, they need to understand that you got to teach skills, you got to teach fundamental, you got to be fundamental in it, and you also have to practice on your discipline. Like that's the perfect time to learn that because when you get to high school, obviously it's a lot more pressure, it moves a lot faster. But if you have mastered the foundation of teaching kids how to play the game, do it the right way, you're going to succeed in so many different ways. So I'm glad that you said that, and I'm hoping that someone's listening to that. Coach, you do a lot of good things with Northwest Volleyball. If people don't follow you on social media, if they don't follow your team on social media, they should, because when you click on the page or you click the tab, you can see so much energy. Like you can see so much energy. You can see the kids enjoying themselves. When I was doing my research, I saw it looked like Coach was doing a TikTok with her young ladies. Like she was moving, just being involved with them. But that's kind of what we are with that, and that's kind of where I'm going to get started. A lot of our older coaches, or more seasoned coaches, and I'm like that at some time. Well, I used to be like that, but I'm leaning more to that side. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when we grew up, our coaches didn't do a lot of that. It wasn't a lot of that. It's almost like you showed up for a job. You punch in and then you punch the clock and then you punch out and then you do it again tomorrow. But with our kids, they want so much more. And I told someone this before. I think growing up, I think we needed that. Because when I look back at some of the things that our kids get to do, we take them out to different events. We do like lock-ins, or we do sleepovers, or we go out and eat pizza. I'm thinking, man, as a 17-year-old kid, I think I would enjoy that too. But it wasn't like that. So you do a great job with that. So, Coach, as we talk about volleyball, talk about how did you go into building this program? Because you are absolutely right. In this metro area, when you say Northwest Rankin volleyball, everybody know Coach Poole. And so with you not necessarily being your first love in the beginning of it, how did you establish Northwest Rankin volleyball to be what it is now?
So, being newer into the volleyball world, I will say this. You know, you and I talked about this. When you're an outsider, people are not going to listen to you really until you kind of prove yourself. And look, I'm the same way. You're not talking unless I'm seeing some action. Like I got to see the action, right?
Right.
So for me, coaching this sport, I knew like, hey, I've got to learn. I've got to learn. So who can I reach out to? Who can I learn from? Who locally can pour into me? And what can I do to help make these kids successful? What is it that I need to do? The mindset that I've always had is how can I do my job so well to where it directly benefits whoever I'm with? Okay. And sometimes to a fault because I was fortunate when I was in high school, we did the lock-ins.
Yeah.
We did the stuff, like we did the things, right? We
Right.
went to the camps. And then outside of that, we went to separate skills camps together because we loved each other so much. So when any program, no matter what the sport, if I'm going to lead it, it's got to come first. Culture comes before anything because without it, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be sustainably successful. And it's miserable. So building the identity on, hey, it's us. We are Northwest Rankin. Okay. And so what does that look like? So we talk about our standards. Standard is a big word here. And so making sure, accountability. If something's not met, how do we hold each other accountable? Okay. How do we want to treat each other? How do you want to be spoken to? How do I want to be spoken to? So if I'm meeting you with a certain tone and I wouldn't like that in return, we got to think about that. And one thing that you said that I like is back in the day, there was not a lot of that. There was not a lot of thought process into how you approach certain people.
Right.
Okay. It was, this is how it's going to be done. And it's the whole roster. And nobody questioned it. I sure as heck didn't question it. And like I said, I still talk to my coach, but if he turned and looked a certain way, it was like, yes, sir, got it. Like you knew. And so with these kids, I think for me, the most important part is trying to figure out how they operate because I got 24 kids and they all operate very differently. Okay. I've been really blessed here. I've had some awesome kids. I will start by saying that I don't have to deal with a lot of the things, but I also argue to say because the standard's very clear. Um, that's my thing. You've got to be so clear about what your expectations are, but then you got to turn around and model them. Okay. I can't ask you to be on time and then me roll up in late every other day. I can't ask you to be intentional and then me walking around holding my coffee cup while y'all are doing reps and me not adjusting you and me not being intentional about coaching you. I need to be 2 hands in. I need to be given feedback, or I just need, even if the feedback's like, "Hey, that's a great touch," you know, or, "Hey, we're asking for communication. Hey, I see you over there communicating." Doesn't Feedback is not always criticism, right? So learning how to connect with these kids and learning how to talk to these kids, especially in 2025, um, I think if you can master being a great leader, I think everything else falls in place. Now, let me just go ahead and say, not everything that comes out of my mouth is going to want to be heard, right? And I'm aware of that. So, and I tell mine all the time, you may not like what I'm about to tell you, but it's always going to be transparent.
Mhm.
I'm never going to tell you something that's going to hurt you. Never going to tell you something that's going to put you down or degrade you. But if I tell you, "Hey, I've asked you 5 times that I need you to make this adjustment and you haven't done it," that's the expectation, right? We can't take that personal. That's not Coach Poole doesn't like me. That's, "Hey, I'm not doing what's required." So I think a lot of times teaching how to take constructive criticism and not take it as an attack is an important component that coaches need to teach these kids today, because a lot of things are taken so personal, it's an attack, that sometimes it gets in the way of their own success. So I don't just learning how to talk to these kids, but also still holding them accountable and coaching them hard.
Coach, that is true. You have to set your culture. You have to have a standard, and that's something that I've been in transition with, going from one school to another. And I think maybe the mistake I made is thinking that some of the things that I did in my previous school, and I went from Pisgah to Richland, that some things were going to just translate over. Like there's some things that has kind of got lost in the wash, as they say, and so I'm having to redefine some things, which has been a has been kind of trying, because haven't had the success that I would like. But I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, these are things I got to do differently. And some things happen, you know, as I got there, that I had to make some adjustments with, that most people probably wouldn't understand unless you're there. And there's some things that I could have done differently. So I'm always taking accountability with this. But I really feel like our culture and our standard is going to be really set solid this year.
Mhm.
Prep does result in wins, which I believe it will, but that's not the most important thing, because we don't have any seniors. We may have like 3 or 4 juniors, and we got mostly freshmen and sophomores. So
In a good spot.
yeah, I'm a real good spot, and I'm excited about it. People like, Coach, you're gonna struggle this year. Like I'm excited because I've had these kids for a little bit, and they kind of understand where I am, and then now I can really see the fruit of my labor,
Right.
because and you know this too, and you and I talked about this earlier. Sometimes when people are looking for hires, they're looking at wins and they're looking at losses. And me and you talked about it, looking at experience. You haven't done it before. But what I try to do is I don't necessarily focus so much on wins and losses. I like to be able to see a coach in his or her element. Like my first time watching you all play, it was last year when we went to Oxford. And I don't know, MRA was there, a lot of other big schools were there and things of that nature. And
Oh,
so
turn
it was at a tournament. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like it was good to see you perform in your and be in your element, your kids in your element, and everything that coach is saying. Supporters of In the Sand podcast, like it's true. Like our kids were disciplined, they gave effort, and yeah, everybody know when you're in a tournament, especially coming from in our area, we had to drive, wake up early that morning,
Mhm.
3 hours, then have to perform at a high level. Of course, coaching them, they played in the bigger pool. So super talented teams, Oxford, things of that nature. So to be able to see that was solid. It was establishment. The young ladies communicated, they spoke, they carried themselves well, they cleaned up after themselves, and they competed at a high level. I know coach didn't probably get maybe the success you wanted, but a team like played like, and it was a very competitive tournament. So you're
We're going
absolutely
yeah,
right.
we're going
Yep.
back to that because like you said, it was very competitive. Like I left there that day saying we got better,
Yep.
right? We were challenged. I mean,
Mhm.
MRA won the MAIS, so I mean, we played very good
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
And, I'd rather take an L and get better
Yep.
and and grow from it than go up there and, like you said, long drive, and then we don't compete, and now that is the worst.
Yes, it is. And that game, actually, when I watched y'all two play, that was actually a very good game. It was a very nip and tuck.
Mhm.
It was very good to see. And you're absolutely right, because of course I know MRA had I think the Dampier girl. I don't know if she played that much varsity level, but she's extremely tall, just like her whole family. So it's good to be able to see that constructive criticism, coach, is major. You're absolutely right. Our kids, your kids will quit on you that same day if you just say the wrong thing. And it's amazing. And I'm glad you said that too. That's something that we have to say more of, because our kids, they'll say, man, coach is doing this, and this. And then the unfortunate part of it is their parents sometimes just automatic believe that. And I know you, like most coaches, have parent meetings, and you can say this over and over again, but somehow it gets lost in there. But our kids have to understand, and even as adults, we have to understand constructive criticism, because I think as the game is progressing, we're getting a little bit older, and their coaches becoming behind us, and some of our administrators have a hard time, I guess, giving them criticism without them feeling some type of way.
Yeah.
Coach, I want to talk about the summer. Your summer looked pretty exciting with your team. I know y'all did a lot of college team camps. Um, I know summer lead, and then also I saw something that you did, which was pretty amazing. The Burn Boot Camp. I know that was pretty popular. So if you kind of talk about that collectively, about how the summer came out for you all, and just some of those things.
So, kind of like you, we were very young. Majority of my court are sophomores,
Okay.
but the thing about those sophomores is they've been playing up for a couple years, so we're sitting in a good spot. I didn't really know what to expect when we went into the summer competing wise. I kept telling people, "Hey, we're gonna surprise some people,
Mhm.
or we're gonna take a couple on the chin, but I think we're gonna answer back. I think we're gonna grow from it, and it might be just a short stall, trying to get those kids to understand, because a lot of those kids were not the player last year. They were role players, but they weren't having to be the leader.
Yes.
So getting those kids to understand to use their voice, and that. So we went to summer league. We had some good matches, and then we had some not so good matches. So in the beginning of summer league in June, I was going, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know. I can't tell you, because the thing is, every summer league, and then even the first MHSAA tournament,
Yes.
I'm always like, "Ooh, what's gonna happen?" And then we will go down, and we'll get past round 2, when there were 5 rounds, or we'll get to round 2 like last year, and then get knocked out right before South State. So, you don't ever know,
Yes.
and you have to be patient and have to just focus on doing the little things right. And so this summer, hey, what can we control? Well, let's work hard. Let's go to Burn Boot Camp. It's off site. We were getting our gym floor redone this whole summer. Um, so go in there. It's a hard workout. I actually work out there myself and train some classes there in my free time. Awesome people, awesome community. And they love pouring in to our schools. And so, like, bring them in here so the kids have fun. Yes, we go to a team camp every year. We went to Ole Miss this year. Since I've been the head coach, we've been to the University of Florida. We've been to LSU. We've been to Mississippi State. I call it the SEC tour. We we like to. I want them to see places that are not Mississippi. I
Yes.
want them to see, because some of these kids will never step foot on those campuses again. But when they're older, they can always say, "Hey, I've been there.
Hmm.
I saw this. I was exposed to, whatever it may be. I remember that trip. That was fun." They may not remember a single thing about competing, but they're going to remember certain things about that camp. And
Yes.
so that's the thing. Like you asked me earlier, how do you, want these kids to feel about this program, or, how do you want to go into coaching this program and creating it? I want them to look back when they're my age and feel about it the way I did. Like,
Yes.
I want them to look back and go, "Man, that was fun. It was hard. There was an expectation, but there was so much fun there, and, lifetime friendships." And I'm excited after what we did at team camp. I think we're gonna surprise people, right? But only if we worry about us and do the little things right. That's how I feel about it. So,
Coach, I like that, taking you didn't make an excuse for it. We're out of our gym. Let's find ways to get better and let's still keep going. And your kids are going to remember that. They're going to remember, like you said, we was out of our gym, but coach still had us doing the things we need to do to be successful. Coach, talk about, and you said it, you're going to surprise a lot of people. Talk about 7A volleyball. I really think 7A across the board is a challenge because I don't think it changed too much because we went from 6 to 7A, but I believe it's more challenging in my opinion, and I could be wrong because it's a limited amount of teams.
You got to be very competitive
Yep.
to even get past round one, whereas those teams before, the really elite teams, were on a bye. Everybody's playing round one,
Yep.
okay? And everybody then round two, I feel like round two is almost like South State caliber. Like sometimes that game is just as strong as the regular championship game, depending on who's in there. Like for example, Brandon and Ocean Springs were in it last year. Those
Yep.
are two top caliber teams.
Right.
And two of the best, and one of them is going to be knocked out. So it doesn't really matter how good you are. It's just so competitive. And so for 7A, just right here in this metro area, I mean, Brandon, Germantown, Madison Central, I mean, we don't have to go far to be humbled, is all I'm going to say. We do not have to go very far to be humbled. And when I say that, it's because if you don't show up and you are not prepared to put in the work and do whatever it takes, and I tell them all the time, when you compete, you risk losing every time you step on the court, right? But what we cannot do is not do the little things right and then expect to have a good result. So we're going to do all the things that we can right. We're going to try, have good attitudes, and we're going to go out there and we're going to just do the things that we practice every day. We'll see what happens. Right. But yeah, it's pretty competitive, especially in this area. And so then we travel to Oxford to play some tougher teams up there. And then a tournament in Hoover. So a lot of your local teams here go to the Hoover tournament in Alabama. And you want to talk about being humbled? Try driving 3 hours, staying the night in a hotel. And that's some of the fastest tempo I think our kids have seen in a while. But we have to play that to be better. It does us no good. So yeah, humbled, but then, learn from it, grow from it. So
Yeah, you said it perfectly, coach. You're right. When you're in 7A and you have a small amount of teams and everybody's in the same pool, it makes it so competitive. And like you said earlier, it does almost turn into, I always, anytime something is a challenge when it comes to divisions, I always say SEC West. Like it almost turns into that because you're competing against those same individuals, and it's not a lot of room for error. So with that being said, coach, what would I think I know, but I could be wrong. What would be your biggest rival game? That's a part that we add into the podcast. Like I always like to talk to coaches about like rivals because there's always a story with a rival game. There's always a lot that you don't see. And I thought that would be pretty cool because there's a competitive edge. And as coaches, we sometimes kind of get frustrated with this. And this is what I mean. Sometimes our kids will get up and play our rival every time. And the next game, it could be somebody that's nowhere near that level, and then they just automatically become flat or they don't perform well, for a nice choice of words to say for the podcast. So, coach, talk about like what is a rival game look like or feel like, or how do you go by that? And like who, and I don't want to put you on the spot because again, somebody may have felt, oh, they don't even consider us to be a rival, but I know everybody has a main
yeah,
rival that everybody knows about. But how do you handle that process, and what does a rival game look like for Northwest Rankin?
nobody ever likes this answer when I say it because I'm not from this state. I'm not from this area. I just moved here. So the rivals that have been put in place, all I know is anybody across that net is an enemy of mine, right? It's us versus you. And so as a competitor, former competitor, I never got too much into what was on the jersey. It was just I knew you were in the way of what I wanted,
Yeah.
right? Which was the win. And so that's always people always say, well, what about Brandon? Brandon's your rival. And I'm like, they ain't my rival. They're not mine, but my kids, I
Yeah.
mean, they've got that rival burned into their brain.
Mhm.
And so how do we try to do it? how do we try to get them past that? Because we don't play flat against competitive teams.
Mm-hmm.
But then we'll play up, and then we'll play Brandon, who sometimes I feel are about the same caliber. Like, we'll play pretty competitive teams, and then we just completely sometimes won't even show up. And for me, that just proves it's a mental thing.
Yeah.
And so trying to grow my athletes on the mental side has been more than the skill. Okay. Because we can pass the ball, we can serve the ball, and we can hit the ball just as good as anybody in the state. But when you take your mind out of it, we don't stand a chance. So approaching the rivalry is trying to speak life into them, speak confidence into them. But at the end of the day, you and I both know if they don't believe it, anything you're saying to them, they're not going to take in. So one of my favorite players of all time outside of MJ is going to be Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he said, right? He said, I knew I wasn't good at X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So in practice, in games, he would go left. He would do things that he knew that he wasn't as good at, right? And he was okay with failing at it. That's not going to be my Achilles heel. Okay. And so that's how I try to approach it with my players. They always get tired of me bringing up basketball references. I'm like, Gino or Emma, they're like, who? So anyways, I always tell them you have to be so comfortable. That's why in practice, like I said earlier, we put them in uncomfortable situations for a reason because we want them to be comfortable in that, which is crazy. But you've got to have them fail in here. So whenever they are having, because volleyball's like this.
It is.
When they are having those moments, they know how to get out of it. So we're coaching more of the mental side. If you only knew how much mental that I'm trying to coach to make them understand, hey, one, your value is not in a stat. It's not how many digs, who you are. And this is my faith, but who the Lord says you are, right? That's what you bring to this program. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay. We're not God's greatest gift to volleyball. God gave us a gift to play volleyball. And so we have to approach it like that. But I think, the cell phones, and I've been recruited by, all the things. I saw one yesterday where coach was kind of making fun. All these kids are posting all these things. They're getting all these offers and these It's all about FOMO, fear of missing out. They think if they're not there yet, then they're not sufficient. And I'm like, that's not reality. Okay. It's not reality. And so, yeah, the mental side, trying to get them to understand if we take care of us and we just learn how to take care of us, we're going to be okay. So I'm hoping that we can give, one time we'll go 25-23 with Brandon. And then next thing we'll go like 25-9. I don't know. So it's one of those things where it's absolutely, it's mind blowing to me because it's that part sometimes where you can't understand it because you never thought that way. I mean, look, when I was in high school, I was put up against Brittany Griner in the Aldine Basketball League.
Wow.
I didn't walk out there going, I suck.
Yeah.
See, I'm just not going to try. Doesn't matter what I do. Like, I was giving her my all. She was just dunking on my forehead. Like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I did, right? But the next rep down the floor, I was trying. So I wish that we had a little bit more grit, but you and I both know that's not going to solely come from me or my coaching staff. That's going to come from in the house.
Yeah.
Right. That's also going to come within themselves. But I do think a lot of times that's where that accountability comes in.
Right.
You can't always be right. Okay. And you can't always be perfect. And so when we get past that, like we talk about failure a lot, it's necessary. You got to fail. We want you to fail in here because we want you to be able to get past that and then again be able to produce. So rivalry, I guess it's going to be Brandon. If you were to ask any of my players, for me, it's us versus everybody. That's how I feel about it.
Coach, that's a great answer that you gave because you are absolutely right. I went to Murrah High School and Callaway was our rival. And my first time playing, I was on a 9th grade basketball team. And you're absolutely right. I was so caught up in, and this is a 9th grade game. So in my mind, I guess I'm going to say varsity game, a ninth grade game, it's not even that many people in the game. But I'm
Yeah.
so caught up in, okay, I gotta beat them. Everybody been saying this, etc. This the rival. And coach, I'm at the free throw line. The ball comes off the rim, hits me in the hand, and I can't catch it. I come in and make a turnover. You already know a sub, and I come sit down. And my coach asked me what's wrong with you? And I'm sitting there, like I'm tripping. I'm like, man, I can't stand up. I'm falling. I'm not focused. And then it just hit me. You too concerned about something that doesn't even matter. The game will take care of itself. So even so, you're absolutely right. When I started to play, it didn't matter who we played. It's even the same way of coaching. It's always like you said, us versus them. Like you respect the rival. You sometimes I lean into it a little bit, just sometimes because our rival is Florence, and
Mhm.
I'm watching the podcast, so I could probably talk a little bit about it. But um you said it key, and this was perfect. Like this exactly so what my kids actually said. It's about the belief system of it.
Mm.
Like I know that my kids, I know last year they didn't even think we could beat them. I don't think they did. I don't think they thought it. But we actually the game came down. I think we ended up losing by 2. We had a shot to win at the buzzer and win the game. And to see them so excited about it, it just lets you know that you're absolutely right about that. And this is something I'm glad coach said it. As coaches, we have to be able to get our kids to mentally lock in.
Mhm.
A lot of time the rival is for the fans, and it's always good. It's good theater, as some people say, but it's always good to be about it. Like I think as coaches, we respect everybody across the line, but it doesn't matter if you are considered to be our rivals or not. I mean, respect is going to be there, but we're going to play it the same because when we, like coach said, when we get caught up in trying to beat you because you got a red and black shirt on, or like if I'm at Florence, they got red and black as well. If I'm in high school, Callaway's blue and orange. If I'm getting caught up in the blue and orange, then I'm missing the
Not
whole.
us very well, are we?
Yes.
No. Yeah.
So that's cool. I've always kind of wanted to see a Brandon Northwest game again. Of course, I know you. Of course, I know Coach Walker. Um,
Mhm.
it's I've just
She's
never had.
awesome, by the way.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She's good people. And I know she says the same about you as well. So that would be something I would love to see. But of course, I think we always play the same night that y'all play.
Yeah.
I guess if I do come to a game, I guess I gotta wear. I was gonna say red and black, but I can't do this. I gotta wear red and gold, and I guess I could support both people. Um, Coach, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna slowly kind of wrap it up. I know we got to get out of here, Coach. I'm looking at some of your accolades, and I want you to talk about them a little bit. And I know you're not the person to brag about it, so that's why I'm bringing it up so people know who you are. But Coach is definitely a humble person. Coach, I want you to talk about the Tomorrow's 25. I saw that she was a part of that. I know what my girls coach, um, Coach Church, she's a part of that as well. I think y'all in the same class. Then I saw this morning, top 40 under 40. I said, look at coach, if you could maybe kind of talk about that a little bit, just a little bit about that. And also too, I learned this as well. I talk about you starting this thing with leadership. And I know it's about leadership. I got a chance to kind of look at it, but I don't want to take away from it by cutting it short by just running over it. So I want you to talk about it more because I think that's important. So just Tomorrow's 25, top 40 under 40, and just what you're doing with leadership.
Okay, so Tomorrow's 25. I got a call last summer, and it was Houghton Buchanan out at Biloxi, and he said, "Hey, you've been selected to be on Tomorrow's 25." I said, "Oh, that's awesome. What is it?" Right? I had no clue. So, as I learned more about it, there's like 300 coaches across the state that are nominated by whether administrators or veteran coaches. So somebody, I have no clue who, somebody in the state thought highly enough of me to nominate me. And then a selection committee goes through, combs through it, and they pick. And I got chosen. And so I had no clue what to expect. Like our first one, we went to Ole Miss and we listened to Coach Yo. And after that, I mean, it was just, we had all these speakers coming in. We got to go to the athletic director conference in January. We went to the Capitol, just this program. And basically, what it is it's pouring into coaches, a fellowship that pours into these coaches that teaches them leadership to take things learned back into their school and their community to pour into their school. And then at the final session, um, they announced that I was chosen to be on the selection committee, which I think when they announced that at the end, me and Coach Devin Hill out of Biloxi were chosen. And I think I went, oh, thank you. Cause I mean, I just had no clue. I feel like in in something like that, I was like a small fish, you know, in a big pond. You're surrounded by a bunch of great coaches. And so I was humbled by that. We just selected the new committee. We got some, they're going to announce that pretty soon, or the new, the class. And there's some great coaches again across the state. So it's just going to be this thing that they keep rolling out. It's powered by Ole Miss, MHSAA, and the Mississippi Association of Coaches. And so it's something that I think is, caught fire and it's just going to keep building. Top 40 under 40. Look, I don't know who I fooled. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I was genuinely shocked when I was chosen for that. I mean, think about Rankin County. There's like 200,000 people here,
Yes.
right? But I'm going to go back and say, I don't think I did anything that was just, I think I just was me. I just poured into the community and it was just things that I've been doing over the time, like getting to know people in the community outside of Northwest and getting to know them as people and those people I feel like, thought well highly of me. Because I was also selected for Rankin County's coach of the year, like top coach and favorite coach of the year. And so
Congratulations.
and for that, I was like, wait, she said, Barbie Bassett, when she went to give me the award, she was like, you had so many nominations. And I was like, wow. I mean, how would I even know? But a lot of it comes from just pouring into the community. But the top 40 under 40, um, we had the canned food drive that we host every year. And I think the biggest thing was really pouring into like the trunk or treat and how much that went into the community. Community service within my team. I honestly don't know what sealed the deal there. Like I said, I think it's just me being me and doing the things that are bigger than myself because it's not just something for an accolade. I truly believe when you pour into your community, they're going to pour back into your school. They're going to build that, that belief system in your school and you're going to have that connection because my biggest thing was how do we get a school this big in a town this big where there's so many schools within 10 miles of here? How do we get this community to be like close knit? Because if you look at Brandon, they are close knit, but it's not a huge town. It's kind of easier. So when you're on Lakeland, Highway 25, you got multiple schools up and down Highway 25. So trying to figure out how to pour and combine those community members with the school. So that was a really cool nomination or selection. I wasn't expecting that one. And then the leadership thing, I I like to say this because I'm a manifester, right? When I am determined, I'm gonna do it, and I just know I'm gonna be an athletic director in the state of Mississippi. I know that. Every step that I've taken, leadership wise, networking wise, my work ethic every day, how I show up, is because that's what I want to be. That's what I'm gonna do. So my thing is, not everybody thinks like me, okay? Not everybody thinks like you. And so sometimes as a leader, I'm going, it's not that hard. Like, why is that hard to understand why you should do this thing really well or why? And so my thought process was, I want to create something where we can pour, not just me, but coaches around the state, coaches in the collegiate world, coaches in the professional world. Like, I want to build something where they can pour into younger coaches or even coaches who are looking to sharpen their leadership. And that's where I came up with Beyond the X's and O's. Um, just talking to other coaches around the state and former, current UFL players, current coaches in the NFL, former coaches at like Florida, just trying to get their perspective on being a leader, an elite mindset. And then hopefully, like I said, it's nothing fancy. Hopefully somebody grabs one thing and they take it with them. It's all I care about, right? It's not for likes and it's not for all of that. It's really just can we reach one person and make them better? If so, then it's served its purpose. So
I think that's good, Coach. Coach, make sure give them how they can get to that. Give them your the social media handle so they can join that so we can get everybody involved because I think leadership is good and I think you'll be an amazing AD.
Thank you. It's at let's talk underscore beyond the X's and O's. And again, it's nothing like I said, it's nothing fancy.
But
And it's nothing, there's no secret, right? It's not this magic potion where you're gonna go to my page and be like, all of a sudden I'm a great leader. It's just very basic, common knowledge, how to do the little things right, how to work up and show and be intentional. Um, and from also different perspectives, like I said, at different levels. And here's a crazy thing, everything they're saying is pretty much in common. So it's not a secret potion to be successful and be a good leader. I just think it takes being intentional. So,
being intentional is very important, and that's in any aspect of life. So that's definitely something I'm gonna write that down is being intentional in all things.
mhm.
Okay, Coach. Again, I got one more question, then I'm going to get out your way, Coach. What do you feel about possibly volleyball for boys in the state of Mississippi? Well, like, what do you think that'll look like possibly? Because I know as you see it, and maybe I'm not sure. Maybe you can speak to it more. Maybe there are some high school teams, maybe in Texas or somewhere in the surrounding area. But what do you feel about that? Because as you starting to see in Mississippi, we started flag football last year, so this will be year two. Obviously, we will start wrestling this year in the state of Mississippi, so that'll be good. And of course, I know Title IX and Title IX. We respect Title IX, and we understand why boys volleyball is initially not played. And again, great that that's solid a rule that we have so we make sure we see equality across the board between male and female sports. But just tell me, what do you feel about boys volleyball in high school?
Well, okay. Every year I go to ABCA, the convention.
Right.
So NFHS and there's updates. Like the last 2 years, it's been how many states have adopted men's volleyball or boys volleyball for high school. I feel like it's coming.
Oh,
It'll. I do feel like it's coming, but just like girls volleyball, Mississippi is behind.
yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be um, within the next year or so because if you look around, you don't really have a ton that are playing it. And so I think you would have to, gain interest and get those kids acclimated to the sport and get them in. But the good thing is it's cost efficient. You already have all of the equipment, so it's not like it would cost a ton of money to implement the sport. And I think if a lot of people had interest and it was something that was pushed, I think that eventually you could see that. But like I said, I don't think Mississippi is going to be one of the first states that jumps into it. But that's just my personal opinion based off of just kind of how we are already in the volleyball world. I
Mhm.
think we would do something like maybe watch the neighboring states, see how they're handling it, and go from there.
I wonder what that would look like. Would they obviously like girls and boys basketball played on the same night? But I don't know if you could probably do boys and girls volleyball on the same night because of I guess you maybe you could. It'll kind of line up for a long night. But what you think about that? What would that possibly look like if they did do that? Would it possibly be on the same night?
Hey, look, don't ask me. I don't. Hey, hey, as much as I have learned and I know, I'm happy to be where I am, and I'm not one that's going to give you a fluff answer because I have no clue. But whatever they decide, I'm with it as long as it doesn't interfere with
What
what
you got going on?
we.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be challenging. I'm thinking about it now. You gotta have football, and of course, it couldn't be on Friday nights, and probably not some Thursday because some football is on Thursday. So that'd be interesting to see. I love the facility that we have in Bridgeland. That's an amazing
Yeah.
ball. Yeah, so that's amazing to be able to see. I'm looking forward to keep expanding and keep growing because you going on a weekend, parking lot is packed. We got people parking down the hill, down the street, everywhere. So it'll be amazing to continue to see that area grow because it's going to be needed. So I'm just excited for that. Coach, as we wrap up this episode, of course, when we do with our basketball coaches, we tell them to take the last shot. Of course, I mean that means for those who are new to the podcast, that pretty much means it's like whoever's our guest, they kind of leave us with the final word. Maybe it's a motivational speech. Maybe they give some people some shout outs. You really can close it any way that you want to. Of course, I know we're not in basketball, so I guess in volleyball, Coach, we're gonna let you take the game-winning serve and end the game for us. So, go ahead, Coach. The floor is yours.
I guess I'm gonna leave everybody with this. No matter where you're at in life, no matter what stage, you don't have to be in a position of, administration or supervisor to be a leader. You can
Mhm.
be a leader from wherever you are. So whether it's school, secondary, college, first job, been on the job for a while, lead from where your feet are, right? So whatever position you're in, you give 150% and you try to show up every day 1% better than the day before. And then my closing remark is, if you're not evaluating yourself, you're not elevating. You
Mm.
cannot grow without self-reflection and, evaluation. So that's it.
Evaluate yourself.
Words of wisdom.
Hey, man, hey, that's some good. I'm writing it down. Evaluate yourself daily. Coach, I'd be remiss if I didn't do this, and this is on me. I usually do this in the beginning of the episode, but I forgot. Coach, tell us a little bit about, and I know we tight for time, but I don't want to leave this out. Tell us a little bit about your assistant coaches and those who work alongside with you, and maybe say something about maybe your family members. I know a lot of people are on the podcast and they're excited to see Coach Poole, and I always like to give some people some shout outs because they watch the whole episode, and it's always good to get recognized. So forgive me for that. I'm sorry about that. I know that was the last serve, but I can't. I'll be remiss if I leave our great coaches out and our family members.
So we have our assistant at the high school, Sharon Ryan. Up
Okay.
until her coaching with us, she's worked every volleyball game. She's from up north. She played volleyball. She was a collegiate lacrosse player, tennis player. Like, she knows the mindset of competing, but also the mindset of how you have to think at that level in order to compete. And, she loves Northwest Rankin. So we're super excited for her on staff. And she is a workhorse. I mean, I don't have to ask her anything. Most times she's coming to me and I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Thank you. So it's awesome to have her. And then really excited about our new middle school coach, Stephanie Kirkendall. She's moving in from Texas. Her husband's the new Millsaps basketball head coach for on the boys side. And she played at Mary Hardin Baylor volleyball. She was at Nicholls State. She's coached volleyball for over a decade. Just watching her with our kids this summer. I mean, I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. If I'm in that room and I'm the smartest, I want to leave it. Okay. I want to grow. And so listening to Stephanie talk has been such a blessing for me because it's like, oh, what she just said, like it turns on a light bulb for me, or it teaches me something that we can implement like at the high school practice. Cause even though she's at the middle school, she comes up to the high school too. So super excited about them on staff. And then we have Grace Mercer. She's the MVP, scorekeeper and bookkeeper. She knows the rotations and she knows the game so well that when I'm in it, I don't have to worry about somebody jumping rotations or being out of rotation. She can spot it. So that's nice to have. Um, so there's that. And then, my family, Jordan, he is my husband. He coaches baseball here at Northwest. Without him being so supportive, right? I would not be able to be what I am. And when I say that, I mean, as dedicated as I am, pouring into this team as much as I do, because we have Tatum and Tyler who are 14 and then Blakely who's 5. And so with them, a lot of times he has to step up to the plate, and that's a baseball, pun. But he's probably gonna roll his eyes at that. But he has to step up, and I mean, I don't have to drag him to it. He doesn't question it, like today we had practice, podcast. I got to go home and get dressed, and we got to come back up here and take pictures for media day. And so he's like, "All right, where do you need me? What do we need to wear?" So my husband and his support is second to none. We work in the same building. We don't see each other all the time. People always ask that. They're like, "How do y'all work together all the time?" I'm like, "Well, we like each other."
Yeah.
So we like each other, but also we don't see each other all day long, right? So there's a healthy balance. And then my children, they are just honestly, they're such a blessing. They are the biggest blessing that I have. They, Tatum and Tyler, they're twins going into ninth grade. Blakely being 5, going into kindergarten. And at night when I lay my head down, one of the last things I say is, "Thank you so much for able bodies, healthy children, and just, my kids and who they are, like who you say they are, because they have just been, awesome." Uh, and then, the rest of my family, they're in Texas. I love y'all, but they're in Texas, and my dad raised me, so my dad and my grandmother, and I think about it today. Like I was talking to him last week, and he was like, I volunteered 50 hours at such and such, and I was thinking, sometimes I wonder where I get it, and it's not hard to. I don't have to look very far, right? That
Right.
man is always working. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever met, and when I talk about selfless, it's not hard to figure out where I get it from because I had a excellent role model and good support system there. So
Coach, man, amazing to see. Shout out to Coach Jordan Poole, man. Good to see some recognition, man. And you got great to. So sometimes I know you're hard working, you're behind the scenes guy. So just shout out to you, Coach. Um, Coach, again, great interview. Also to Coach Taylor at Mazda Central, JT. Jump on the podcast. I'm gonna get Coach Poole to get on you by getting on the podcast. But Coach, I've added this segment. I'm gonna close it with this. I'm adding just a verse at the end of the interview. I never know what verse I'm gonna use, but I listen to whoever I'm interviewing, and when I look at all of these notes that I'm taking, and I'm listening to your journey, and this is the first thing that stood out to me, and this really came from what we said off camera. And I know you know this verse, but of course it's a verse that I say when I feel like things are not always working out for me. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I always read it twice. So I'm going to say it again. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for the good of them that love God, who are called according to his purpose. So, Coach, I thank you for this great interview. Supporters of In the Sand podcast. I always say this: support Coach Poole. You may not support In the Sand podcast, but support Northwest Rankin Volleyball. Support those young ladies. And I say it all the time. I say it jokingly, but I am for real when I say it. Coach Poole, she already named assistant coaches, so she don't need anybody help coaching. If she needs you, she gonna get out to you, let you know. But where you can support her, pray for her. Support the young ladies. See if they need something. They got to travel, they got to eat, they got to go different places, and they probably have all those different things, but it could be a way that you can support them. Finances is always a good thing, but just good support, showing up to the games, being a good fan, those things make a difference. That's how you help a coach out.
that's
So
right.
please do that for me. We appreciate that. Until next episode, as I always say, be nice, be kind, and we'll see you on the next time. Have a good one.